In this video, I'm taking you on location to a real-world aerobic septic system inspection so you can see exactly what's included in these and why it matters. What's going on, guys? Luke here with Luna Environmental. Now, on screen, the video you guys see is me and our septic technician walking up to just a classic aerobic septic system maintenance inspection. We do these about every 4 months for our customers who are on contract. The very first thing that we do when we pull up to a house is start to check the air compressor and the air compressor filter. Now, you can see as a homeowner why it's so important to have this air compressor either cleaned or even just completely replaced, which is what we did in this particular inspection pretty regularly, because that air compressor is what's pumping oxygen into your aerobic septic system, which is what makes it an aerobic septic system in the first place. So that filter, while small and seemingly inconspicuous, is extremely important. Now, after dusting off the air compressor and replacing the filter, we move to the panel and we just want to make sure that the test alarm switch actually works on the panel when we push it up, and it sounds like this. Once we confirm that that light and alarm is going off, we then remove every single lid one by one to each one of the chambers within the overall septic tank. Now, this first chamber you see on screen is called the primary tank. This is the thing that catches everything that comes from your house, and so it's naturally kind of the most disgusting. You can see that layer of scum that sort of sits on the top of that tank, and really what we're looking for here is just to see how much scum layer we can see on the top. We're going to take some solids test here in just a second, but we want to get an initial look to see how full it is and how thick that scum layer appears to be. Now, most aerobic septic systems are divided into the primary tank, the aeration chamber, the clarifier chamber, and then the pump tank or the discharge tank. But sometimes we get a little bit more of a nuanced configuration depending on what house we're at, and that is the case at this house. In fact, the second lid that we're opening here is kind of this additional chamber where a lot of that liquid effluent and that liquid wastewater ends up coming before it gets pushed to the aeration chamber. So in some ways, this is kind of an additional chamber. And while it's not always this way, that chamber is where all of that wastewater goes without the solids, without the scum layer, before it gets pushed into the aeration chamber where the oxygen gets introduced. It's just kind of an extra measure of filtering that isn't always necessary, but this septic system has it. Now, this next chamber we're opening is the aeration chamber, and you can tell because you see the moving water, right? You see the air bubbles, you see the moving water, and we even actually see some like kind of grass or weeds growing, and we'll come back to that in just a second. But this is the exact reason why your septic system needs to be on some sort of regular maintenance or inspection, because this is going to be a problem in the future that we need to notify the homeowners about. Now, this next chamber we're opening is the clarifier chamber. This is the last stage before that water gets put into the pump tank and then distributed into the environment. And then finally, after that, we have the discharge tank. And in that discharge tank, you're going to see that white PVC that is the pump. It actually helps to pump the water out. But then you also see that internal lid underneath that riser lid, and it's made of concrete, and it's actually not sitting properly inside the tank. Yet another reason why these regular maintenance inspections are so important, because this is the exact type of issue that can allow things to get into your pump tank that you don't want in your pump tank. Ideally, in this tank, all we have is that liquid wastewater, which we call effluent. There are no solids in it, again, ideally. But when you have a lid sitting upright like this and it's not positioned correctly, you can imagine if anything got in here, if there was any groundwater that spilled over, everything's going to get into that tank very, very easily, including any type of solid. So this is going to be something we set right before we leave. Now, after we've opened that final pump tank, we are going to test the alarm float to make sure that when that alarm float rises because of the rising water levels, that red light goes off and it sounds like this. After we've confirmed the alarm float indeed sets off the alarm sound and the light, we're going to then lift the pump float to make sure that when that comes up, that pump turns on. Now, after we've confirmed both those things are functioning, we're going to do a sludge judge or a solids level test in each one of the chambers within the tank. So this is where we stick that big straw down into the tank, and essentially what we want to see is that in the primary tank, that tank that catches everything from your house, we're obviously going to have the highest level of solids because that's where everything comes before it gets treated. And ideally, as we go progressively from tank to tank, we're going to start to see that solids level reduce, eventually getting into the pump tank where we have the lowest amount of sludge, the lowest amount of solids inside that tank before things get pumped out. Now, just a quick note on the solids testing here. This is actually the only true way to know if your septic tank actually needs to be pumped. We can guess, we can give time frames, we can start making estimates based on what we know and how many people are in the house and what the tank actually looks like. But until we put that in, take it out, and test the solids in different areas of each of the chambers and test each of the chambers individually, we're not going to know. And this is one of the most valuable parts of one of these regular maintenance inspections, because now we can actually build up and forewarn homeowners, hey, you're going to be looking at a pump out around this time, but we're going to check again at our next inspection. And this keeps people from being shocked when they have to actually do a pump out, and it keeps things from needing to go wrong before you figure out you need a pump out. A lot of homeowners who aren't having the tank inspected on a regular basis really have no idea until something goes horribly wrong, like water water levels rising, like the septic backing up into the house, like a really terrible odor outside around the septic tank. Those are problems that are telling you something needs to be addressed right now, and likely it's a pump out. This is what allows us to catch it with tons of time between when it needs to be done and when we're anticipating it, so that we can actually plan accordingly and make sure that your septic system is working just like it's supposed to, not having problems and then having to be reactionary and fix them. Now remember earlier in the video, we started pulling out grass and roots that were growing inside of the aeration chamber of this aerobic septic tank. I want you guys to hear in real time our technician diagnose the problem in this particular part of the tank and tell you why this really matters.
You can actually see when I push how the water recedes in that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You see it?
Uh-huh.
There's a major root infestation in this.
This is again why regular inspections are so important, because here we are on location and we figure out, oh my gosh, there are roots growing inside of this aeration tank, which is actually not that uncommon, but you can imagine what kind of disaster this can create in your yard, replacing septic systems, replacing drain fields, all of that sort of stuff. But if we can catch things like this early, we can start to treat it. And you can see we had to yank out some of that stuff. And actually we had to schedule a future work order to have a technician come out and get rid of those roots completely, or as completely as possible. And if we weren't inspecting this tank on a regular basis, this would be the exact scenario where the homeowner would have no idea that this was happening until something terrible happened and something way more costly happened that we would have to come and fix. But here we can prevent it because now we know it's there. Now, after we've documented the tree root problem here, we're going to go walk the drain field. And this is basically just the part of the yard underground where that septic is going to discharge. The system is going to send that effluent, that wastewater that has been cleaned and treated, into the environment. It slowly drips out underneath the ground. In this case, there are other types of systems that spray it out and even more systems that do other things. But in this case, we are dripping it out underneath the ground. And basically what we're looking for when we walk a drain field is we're looking for any area of the grass that looks really green. We're looking for areas that are soft and maybe mushy, maybe where you see some surfacing wastewater, some surfacing effluent, and we want to take note of all of that. In this case, everything was clean. It looked exactly like it should. And so we document that next. And then finally, we come back and we start to put all of the riser lids back on top. But before we do that, our technicians clean everything up, because this is actually one of the most difficult parts of making sure a septic system stays intact. The lids, believe it or not, lids are so poorly treated, screws are stripped, and it's so difficult to get them on and off. We take a little bit of extra time to clean the mud off of them to make sure that those screws get replaced before we leave, so that the next tech who comes can do it really cleanly, or if a homeowner wants to get out there themselves and actually inspect their tank, they can do that well. Then after we get all those riser lids back on, we put the air compressor lid back on, confirming that new filter is in. Everything has been tested. Everything is confirmed to be working. We're going to document this as a functional system that does need those roots treated, but other than that, it's in really, really great condition, and we close up shop. So there it is, a real-world, on-location aerobic septic system maintenance inspection step by step. Each inspection has a little bit of nuance that makes it unique to that one, like the roots did in this case. We were able to surface that problem. Now we can fix it before it gets any worse. And of course, there's more nuance when the septic system looks a little bit different than the last one. But ultimately, each inspection is composed of those primary steps because it allows us to, number one, prevent problems before they happen, number two, see current problems, and number three, it helps us make these systems last a very long time. If you got some value watching this video, seeing what is included in a maintenance inspection, make sure to share this video with a friend who you know is on septic and maybe they're having trouble with it, or maybe they just don't know how to fool with it. This is going to help them a ton, and we want to see this information shared because our goal here is to make septic simple. And from Luke here at Luna Environmental, I'll see you guys in the next video.